What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Macro Perspective. Here, my distinguished guest today, none other than Seamus.
What's going on, Marcos, man? We're recording this a few days after the new year. Happy New Year, man. 2025, we made it.
Happy
Holy
New Year,
cow.
man. I know, crazy, right? Yeah, so I mean, today's topic that everybody already clicked into, and so they know exactly what to expect is, man, where to go if you feel like your New Year's resolution is failing, right?
Yeah.
I think Apple had been recently running an ad talking about how, what is it? The second Friday of New Year is when most resolutions go to die, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were boasting like Apple Watch can be your companion to get like your goals, right?
Hmm.
Which I thought was brilliant. They actually said that there was a particular day that that day is called. So because technically today, as we record, it's the third, so it's like a Friday. So I guess most people will probably start this upcoming Monday because of this year 2025 is a WTF year. Also, fun fact: apparently, it's like the first year where January has 5 Fridays in it.
Yeah, I noticed
Uh,
that. I noticed
and
I had
like
like a lot of weed. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, first time in like over 800 years, supposedly, which I feel like that's hard to believe, but like you should fact check me on that. I don't know where I read that. Let's see, like 2025 Fridays. Da, 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 and last time it happened, January, and last time it had 5. All right. Oh, dude, the stat is so bogus. Last time January had 5 Fridays was 2021.
Oh. So it's like an every 4 year cycle, it sounds like. Yeah.
Ish.
No, I like this, dude. I think 2025 is your. I like what you're alluding to there with the specific day that your New Year's resolutions go to hell. You're just like, I think I think we're kind of alluding to what this whole concept is like people get motivated for a few weeks with the resolutions, and then 2 weeks kind of goes by, and then it's just like, right.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they say that, like, and primarily around fitness, health, and nutrition, you have these goals. The gyms, popped up for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that, there's no more gym craze. You're like, all right, it's cool. All the hours aren't so booked.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, how did December go for you? Speaking of, like, where do you feel like you stand? Do you need a resolution, or like, do you feel like the habits that you've had are
Yeah,
there?
yeah. So I teach a lot of my clients and a lot of the patient base that I work with that, like, New Year's starts for me December. So I lock in a lot of my goals starting December so that when I get into 2025 or get into January, you're actually like 3 to 4 weeks within that goal already. And while everyone else is working to get themselves started on the goal because of the clean resurgence that a new year brings, you're already a month into doing that thing. So for me, I've been on this little performance cut, just from a health and wellness perspective. I've been focusing on some financial goals. So I'm working on those things already. So, like, when January 1st came around, I felt that resurgence. I'm like, cool. I did my prayers, did some gratitude, some journaling, but
Mhm.
it was just back to the commitment that I already made a month prior. Right. So that's for me.
Yeah. How much tracking or what level of enjoyment did you have for December?
Oh, I enjoyed. But on the key holidays, how do I say this? Like, Monday, most of the weeks, I'm pretty just like tracking. I'm doing my training and stuff like that. I would say the holiday days, like 1 or 2 days, are the days that, like, I'm just gonna enjoy myself. So, like, New Year's Eve, no, Christmas Eve, Christmas, and then New Year's Eve and New Year's, I was just like, it's whatever for me today. Um, but I was still getting my training sessions in. I didn't miss a training session. I was still going to sleep. Like, I tell people all the time, New Year's Eve comes around, I nap until 10 minutes before the ball drop. watch the ball drop, 12:01, peace out, I'm sleeping. I'm that kind of guy. So, but yeah, I would definitely say that, for me, I'm just doing the thing, just doing the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this year was the first year in a while where, I was trying to be in it for like just 1 or 2 days versus like having longer stretches of days doing it. And actually, like, I'd noticed personally, like, just eating too much food that would have been a little rich or like part of like the holiday season, like 2 days in a row, like, actually my wife was like, no, I'm done. I'm done. Like, and it wasn't like it was anything like too crazy. It was just we actually, I think it was Christmas Day when we had some fried, like,
I saw
um,
that. I saw some of your food. I was like, dang, man,
I
going
know,
all out chef, man. Look
all
good.
out, right? So we had the chicken cutlets, and it was just like fried in like olive oil, but like it wasn't like it was super heavy, but like it just didn't like sit well in our stomachs because there's just like so seldom that we have like any fried food, even homemade fried food, and it's like, yeah, it's like
Mm.
higher quality olive oil, but I think it was a little again, like it kind of made me realize that I think for a lot of people, myself included, the thought of eating particular foods like sound better than they actually hit these days. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a coming of age thing or if it's more of a like it just if it's something that's kind of like happening where you again, like associating the food more with like the holiday tradition, I feel like is something that I'm looking more forward to or had looked more forward to. And like the actual act, the act of like preparing it all was like more rewarding than actually eating it. So next
Yeah.
year, I feel like if we can again still do those things, 'cause I know my mom kind of like has like a like, she really needs to do that in order for her to like feel like she's doing holidays right. Like, is there any more I can do? Blah blah blah. Like, and
Yeah, my mom's the same way. Like we have this usual dish that she makes, and it was all there this holiday seasons, and yeah, we just do that. I'm the same way. We do the same kind of thing every year, you know.
yeah, and so we obviously like should do that and like kind of give a little bit away because I think like again you I don't know if this is just the generational thing, but I feel like anybody that's over the age of 65 doesn't know how to cook for anything less than 20 people when it comes to the holidays, like even though there's five of us there. So,
Dude, I'm telling you right now, Filipino household, straight up, like I was kind of like taken back that when my mom made the food for New Year's, there was there was like enough for us, and then there was just a little bit for my brother to take for like meal prep for like 1 or 2 days, and I was like, huh, that's crazy because Thanksgiving, like just a month prior, I felt
mhm.
like everybody had like a week's worth of food, and I was like, something shifted, something shifted.
Yeah. And I think for both of us, the thing that kind of maybe helped us with getting a head start with like staying on the habits but still having like enjoyment was we have a timeline that we've been talking about this event for a while, and obviously it starts basically we basically need at least 12 weeks worth of training to kind of build up to doing well
Yeah,
at it, right? So I think that was helpful because it was like performance outcome goals and not so much like again worrying about like dieting was again like maybe if you eat a little bit more, right? So nothing,
yeah.
and it wasn't that it's like a bulk, right? Like I think for a lot of people the
I think some more
context
of a
of
performance. Yeah.
yeah, like the context of like looking forward to something to go perform at was helpful because you're like, all right, like if I eat this I gotta still get my training in. You mentioned like that happening for you, and I think that was a big one to have this year, whereas last year was like just like all steps related. So
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I mean, let's talk about that. Some of those key points on what the audience can take away, right? From it's 2 3 weeks from New Year's. We're recording this kind of like New Year's Day or a few days out. The top things you think are relative to keep someone going after that first 2 weeks or that Friday that Apple was talking about. I think one of them, you just said it, is having a specific goal. I think if you can get very specific, and we talk about what SMART goals, right?
yeah.
Um, I think those SMART goals are going to be very helpful. I think that's like one area. I noticed you put me at, pinned here uh, as well. But yeah, so yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, what do you think about the SMART goals or having a goal, and how that can help somebody, after the 2 weeks and all that?
Mm. So again, like, what does it mean for a goal to be smart? Obviously, I think that like it's an acronym, right?
Yeah,
But also I think it was intentionally picked because we're looking to make sure that we have picked out something that obviously we can actually accomplish, right? And it maybe needs to be a moderately lofty goal, right? So a smart goal, right? Specific, measurable, observable, right? Or achievable, realistic, and time bound, right?
yeah,
Um, Ultimately, right? That specific thing, right? I think for both of us, like we already had a smart goal laid out, which helped us get into preparation. And, as it pertains to someone coming into this new year, right? If you need something that's specific to you, right? What that goal is, again, it might be I need to lose 10 pounds or I need to get ready for this 5K or run this half marathon or, insert whatever kind of New Year's resolution thing, you had
yeah,
here, right? So ultimately, you will then have to break this down further, right? But there should be things that you're measuring, right? And I
yeah,
think for another, I mean, we talked about wearables, right, as part of our thing last week, right?
yeah,
Whereas this week, again, like, different things that you can have measuring in the background. I talked about that.
yeah, yeah.
Continue to find ways to record some metrics, right? I personally was like journaling it for a while. I know that you like it that way too. And then I started using our Cinegenics Coach app, right, or Trainerize, right, our white labeled
Yeah, yeah.
version. And that's been really helpful because I'm like, man, like, do I really want to put this data down? It's like I don't really care what happens long term, but I know like next week I'm going to see these numbers. I'm going to go try to beat myself, right? So I'm measuring it.
That's
Then,
that's why I love the training app. I love the training app because it has all the numbers right there, and then I see it. I mean, in the journal too, it has that too. But I see it and I log it, and I love seeing that in the Trainerize app. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try to beat this, like maybe 2 pounds, 1 pound, like my overhead press. I was trying to go heavier with. What I also like about the Trainerize with these metrics is it is such a nice app because after each training sessions, it goes, hooray, you just hit your 300th workout, or hooray, you just hit 5 more pounds on that thing, and I'm like,
yeah,
that is a small win. So I screenshot some of those sometimes. I
yeah,
screenshot
right.
some of those.
I mean, like, yeah, the mentioned that you had 12 PRs this session. And again, like sometimes if you need a little bit of motivation, like, oh, I didn't even realize I went heavier on like my single arm cable pull down, like for me, I actually have to add a lot of movements into it because they're not in the library because I like having
Yeah.
such obscure angles and things like that. And I need to remind myself, like, this is what I actually meant. Right. But again, like the goal for me is to constantly be achieving something that's a little bit like in terms of a progressive overload. Like
Yeah.
again, I'm maybe not as like mesocycled out like a lot of people are, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I like being like, hey, I'm gonna probably run this for 4 or 6 weeks. It usually gets a little bit stale by then or kind of peak out. So, swap a few
Same.
movements here and it keeps it kind of fresh and inviting, a little bit of novel
100%.
soreness,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
The metrics that I'm doing are similar to you. Like 3 to 4 weeks, I'm on a program. Maybe at that third, fourth week, like sometimes I'll have like nicks and just little like pains or something like that. And I'll just like adjust like a move that I just was like, for example,
Yeah.
today, like I was like trap bar deadlifts. Like I was like, yeah, my back. I'm gonna go hit some leg press instead because like I was just trying to get the stimulus of like legs and like a pushing motion or a pulling motion as well. But I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to deadlift, like I just I want to do something else. And like that's the cool thing about like the apps is you can kind of swap and have some things, but you're not changing the whole program. You're changing one or two things, which is it essentially isn't gonna mess with the whole thing. I think the next thing though, attainable. I want to kind of pause here for a moment and kind of think about this attainable. I want to say this because I've been that person that a new year comes around and I'm like, oh, I really want to make this happen, and
Yeah.
it's like I've read too many of these books where it's like 10x this, and like 100x this, and then you have this like such a lofty goal. Is it truly attainable? And I like some of those concepts of like self development where they're like really think outside of your realms, really get uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
really do these things because sometimes yes, you have to get out of your own mind and get out of your own way and start going, oh, there are other possibilities out there, and that opens your minds to different things. But when it comes to, let's just say, fat loss for a goal, like what's truly attainable for somebody, right?
Hmm.
And Yeah, when you think of attainableness, Marcos, like what are some thoughts that you might have around making a goal attainable?
Well, kind of realistic based off of your current level, right? So someone that comes in that might be, again, depending on like, again, you gauge this yourself, right? I feel like I have 20 to 30 pounds to lose, right? All right, cool. Maybe you are, 20 pounds or 10% over like a body weight that you kind of would like to be at. I feel like 10% goal personally is always realistic for a lot of people when it comes to like kind of the dieting front. And usually after New Year's, you may have gained about like 3 or 4, with a little bit of bloat. So like those first couple pounds might fall off, but then the last 6% maybe is a little bit more difficult, right? Um, so so it's like based off a fitness level and or current self, right? So, I mean, we looked at something that we thought was like, again, moderately lofty. We thought was attainable. We looked at the high rocks and we're like, hey, can we get this done as a team in an hour and 15 minutes, right? And then threw it into ChatGPT. We're like, is that even possible? All right, cool. They're like, based off of this, you need to run everything in 40 minutes, and then the rest is like 35. I was like, okay, the stations, like 8 stations, some of them a little bit longer, some a little shorter, 35 minutes, maybe. I don't know. 40 minutes of running. I was like, that sounds hard, right? That's a 5 minute 1K pace. I don't know. But again, like
Dude, I
I
was hitting some 1Ks the other day and I was like, God damn it, I'm seeing black, man. I'm seeing these black dots, bro.
so again, like I think too, like achievable or something you hope to attain. Okay, like that we're trying to base our training splits off of these numbers, right? And if we don't get there, we don't get there. It's okay. But I think because we set that number in the beginning, our intentions like we're literally trying to train around this like 5 minute 1K pace, right?
Yeah,
Which is again not super fast, but it's hard enough because you gotta do all the in-between stuff, right?
yeah,
And also then again, the other 35 minutes, it's like improving technique and transitions. And, again, I know that other people mentioned for this event in particular, right? Like they're depending on how the logistics of the event works, right? Like, am I going to be bummed out that I don't hit an hour 15? Hell no. Like I'm doing this. So again, I hope I can achieve it.
yeah,
And because it's obviously relevant to like the long-term goal, which is the next part of the acronym, right? It's,
yeah,
it's relevant because like this is a performance related goal, right? And I have to work at things that I genuinely don't love, right? But I've actually grown to like it. If you would have told me, Seamus, that at the beginning of last year, 2024, that I'd be spending the end of 2024 putting in like 12 miles a week in terms of like running, I would have said like no fucking chance, not a shot in hell, dude. And here
dude,
we
I'm
are.
telling you this right now. The running virus, I think, got to you, bro. Like I shit you not. I think everyone just became like a runner last year. Like because I first heard of High Rocks in 2023 when your previous client that you worked with, and she'd been on our podcast before. I'm blanking on her name right now. Did like the High Rocks, like she's like, oh, I'm going to the UK to
Oh,
do a High Rocks or something like that. Or
was it? I
she
mean,
has
I remember. Was it Reagan?
Reagan, yeah, yeah. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that sounds
Okay.
cool. And then I just never thought about it again. Never thought about the High Rocks again. That was like summer 2023. Then December hits 2023 and I start running. I get away from jiu-jitsu. I'm completely done with that lifestyle. And Desiree has this goal. We meet her coach. Her coach is like, oh yeah, run a half marathon, then just do a High Rocks after because it's gonna be the same thing. I fully embraced that hybrid life. Like running is like such a part of my life now. Running with me and Desiree is such a part of my life now. And like, yeah, I tell you this right now that like if running was something you told me you're like, oh, you're gonna do a lot of that, I was like,
Nah.
I like conditioning. I like conditioning. I don't fucking like running. I don't like running.
Yeah.
But now it's like a part of it, you know.
Yeah, because like again, I was so turned off by this particular thing because it wasn't aligned with my goals. It was never relevant to anything I wanted to achieve, even amidst CrossFit. I was like, yeah, if I do a local event, it's hard. It's hardly anything I should like worry about. Like I'll take the L there to like do more work on the other stuff. Come to find out, it's very relevant to just general overall fitness and the improvements of like pumps in the gym and how the blood flows and recovery time between sets. And all these
Yeah,
things have improved as a result of like this specific smart goal with achieving a hour 15 high rocks, which means blah, blah, blah. Like again, all these things that were clearly a smart goal related goal set between me and Adam
Yeah.
Shout out Adam, you know, Align
So,
Physical Therapy right here. I'm wearing a
Line
shirt.
physical therapy, best guy to fix up my traps and shoulders. Number
And
one,
this
seriously.
this episode is sponsored and brought to you by no,
In
uh,
Henderson, Vegas.
yeah. So the you know, this goal of that thing again, like this was what we sat down and talked about. Uh, you had actually brought it up because that was like part of our coaches group, and then it led to this thing because I basically was like, "Hey, would you be interested?" Next thing you know, he was like, "Yeah, signed us up. Here's the split. Here's what we're doing." He was the one that was like sending me the stuff, and I'm like, "All right." I'm like, so,
You figure it out. You're the coach. Figure it
and
out.
obviously this is time bound, which is the last thing in this because
Yeah.
the event is February 1st or 2nd, right? It's like the first
Yeah,
weekend.
February 1st.
Yep.
I wanna say this. I think this is probably one of the, I mean, they're all important. I think the SMART goal is really important, but I'm gonna put time bound specifically, like right now. I think it's gonna be important because I think a lot of folks, I just hear it all the time. Seamus, I'm gonna go back to a weight loss one because it's just the easy one for me. I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to lose this. Well, like when? Like when do you want to do that? It's like you've been dealing with this, and I've talked to a lot of clients where it's like you've been dealing with being overweight for a long time. This overweightness has been dealing with your confidence issues, maybe your performance, or even just like your energy, your day to day, how you focus at work, or even with your kids. When is this going to happen now? And I really emphasize time bound because I really think if you can get specific on that, it makes the mind and the body and the whole person actually shift all their actions to hit that. Like February
Mhm.
1st, if you and Adam don't show up, you're gonna see it. You're like, it's not even an hour and 15, it's like 4 hours and 15. I'm just making an atrocious joke. Obviously, you're not gonna do that. But if someone says, hey, I have this wedding in 6 months in June, I want to get good looking for it. It's like, yeah, like let's make
Mhm.
that specific. I think sometimes when you have a generic health goal and you just go, I just want to be healthy, it's just kind of BS to me because it's like, well, when, why now, what's going on? Like, is there like a health concern? Did your doctor tell you like you got to get your glucose down in the next 90 days, like something? I think that's very important for the people to hear that.
I mean, typically the only thing that changes people, man, in all my years of coaching is the proverbial rock bottom. Rock bottom with your health, rock bottom in finances, rock bottom in this, that. Like, that's what made me make the change, right? So, ultimately, like, how do you be proactive versus reactive, right?
Mm,
Which is also where I had a hard time understanding our space with longevity at times. I'm like, but now here I am. Like next thing you know, it's like I've elevated 6 years up. And I'm like, oh, I'm in my 30s. Next thing you know, I'm worried about what's going to happen at 40. What's going to happen under my hood, right? Like, am I gonna do a clearly scan at 30 years old just because like again, like because like the time bound is like, well, I don't even know what my morbid picture of like longevity looks like. Is it 80 years? I only got 50 more to go, which is hard to kind of fathom. But next thing you know, you hit 40 and you're like, oh shit, I'm halfway there, right?
yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah,
time is the one thing that we all have in common, right? It's the one thing that we all know definitively. Like, tomorrow the sun will hopefully rise at this time based on that, and whatever. Right now as we record this, it's 3:32, right? All right, cool. Like it's something that we can kind of all agree upon, right? That like we never have enough of. So that timeout component, yeah, is so etched into the importance of building the goal because again, like the goalposts will likely move over time, but if you do definitively put some sort of like stamp or mark in the sand is like this is where I should be,
yeah,
okay, you get to that point and then you have to reevaluate and you're like, oh fuck, I like fucked off for too long. I should have started sooner, right?
yeah,
And I mean that was part of it where again we thought, cool, doing one run a week would get us there. And then I was like, yeah, I think we need 3 days or 2 days, one with pacing, one with this. And so now we've even adapted the training, which again, at first I'm like, oh dude, like the hypertrophy gains are going to be like down the drain. And I'm like, I'm not making any hypertrophy gains right now, regardless. I'm not eating enough food. So
you gotta get the performance goals. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that I love what you said there, and I think we'll kind of keep that there for the SMART goals. I think for the audience and listeners, hey, look, get smart about your goals, get specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, relevant, and time bound. I think another component of making that momentum go for 2025, especially at the second week, third week.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think we can talk about, we talked about coaching, but what is coaching? accountability. I think accountability in multiple ways, right? I think if you can get an accountability with an accountability buddy, like a friend that you go to the gym with, like you and Adam, right? Or yeah, you get some coaching, like whether it's like me or Marco's coaching you up, or even a community like a run club. Accountability is another person, a group, or even yourself holding that mirror up to yourself and going like, "Hey, you said you were going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a reminder. Here's a reminder."
Well, I mean, I don't know who needs to hear this, but the number one thing that will help you hit your goal in 2025 is finding a support system, right? Your unique support system. What that looks like could be the coach, like Seamus said. It could be, that group class that you've been kind of hemming and hawing about because you feel like you're not in shape enough for it. It could be, your family. It could be really anything. But ultimately, having that system is going to help you keep showing up on the days that you don't want to. And trust me, I've been doing fitness related activities for a long time, and nothing makes me more excited than me. Like, I got a group of people that I get to go hang out with first thing in the morning and get a good lift session, right? That
Yeah, yeah,
45 to 60 minutes every morning is a highlight in my day. And hopefully it's a highlight in theirs, right? You get
yeah.
to shoot the shit or have that shared experience of quote unquote suffering. And it literally can change your life in 25.
100%, beautifully said. Clip that. One of the things that I really loved about the CrossFit movement, I remember this is like a CrossFit documentary like 12 years ago, or even like almost maybe like 15. And it was just about the box, the CrossFit box, the concept of the box. And it was just the concept of like the community is so powerful that the coach doesn't even check in on the members. It would be like the member going like, yo,
Why aren't you
texting the
here?
person,
Why
why
aren't you
aren't you
here?
here, dude?
We
And
noticed you weren't
and
there.
they
Yeah.
and it's not like one person, it's like 2 to 3 people, and it's like, hey dude, you missed out, and we usually do coffee afterwards, like what's going. And it may not even be like a question of like, oh, you dummy, like you didn't show up. It's more like concern. They could be like, dude, is everything good, like what's going on, like. And that question right there, you're like, oh shit, like yeah, like oh I got sick, and all this. So I think that accountability is powerful, man. I don't think there's a number on accountability. I think
Mhm.
it's like we can think about metrics and stuff like that, but accountability is just so powerful. And I don't want to do that, but I want to focus on one more, and we could talk about this the last few minutes here. But routines, habits, routines.
Mhm.
Why are routines and habits so powerful in helping you maintain the New Year's resolution? Why is that?
Mm. Well, I mean, again, let's just say that everybody's at a sticking point right now, or you built just fantastic momentum, right? But are you so calloused with your current routine in the sense that like if you don't get that done, that you will fall off, right? So I
Yeah,
think that that's another thing that people like. You should look forward to that thing, but you're really more focused on the things that are like part of the habit versus just like the outcome, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
also you can't be like religious about it in a sense. Like there's some element of that, but you like again, like you don't necessarily need it daily, right? So having
yeah,
those rest days and other things scheduled are equally as important to achieve your goal as it is to, just having the routine and habit. So again, I think that's the thing that everybody comes out the gate so hot. We're 2 weeks in, right? Like theoretically,
yeah,
right? As we release this. And then what? Right?
yeah,
Right, like again, like you had 14-day streak, right? And this is where I think streaks maybe don't look at something that's always like a daily thing, especially with exercise,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
streak is more about like, hey, I'm gonna zoom out. Maybe you get one of those big year calendars. I thought that was actually pretty cool. My cousin posted like everything that we did in the year, and it was like we had no weekends that weren't like quote social. And that's a big thing to her. I thought I was like, that's actually a sick thing to look back on. Is like have all these things of like wedding, other wedding. Like everybody in my on that side of the family got married, so it was like all of her brothers and sisters, right?
I
So
know,
they
man.
were, traveled here, there. Like, what a great way of just being like, this is a cool thing to like just reflect on at the end of the year. So I might steal that from her and get us like a calendar, throw it right there, and just be like, it may just be like Zeke's, soccer tournament, and I'll be like, oh my god, like again, like, I won't remember that next December unless I have it written down somewhere. So
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
that's a way of like also kind of stemming into the thing of like it's a habit to like write these things down and kind of visually see all the things that you're accumulating over time. but also too, it's
Yeah.
another way of tracking your progress is just kind of having this big kind of silly kind of calendar thing that like, again, like make it your own, right? You don't,
Yeah.
this is just a way of like being like, man, like, did I tell you about the guy who's like, God, he called his fitness program fat. Like he called it his fat program, like FAT. And I was like, all right, I got to hear
Mm.
this. He's like fitness, alcohol, and uh shit. What was T? Can't remember. Whatever. So he's like, did I get something that was like physically active for 45 minutes on that day? Yes or no, right? Did I drink alcohol? Yes or no, right? Did I like again like did I track my food? I think something to that degree, right? Or just like whatever he said. And he literally just had, he's like, I literally would write an F if I got the F, got the A for the A, and the T for the T. And I want to see as many fat ass days as I can. And I was like
I
laughing.
like that. That's a great
Yeah.
acronym, and that's a great like just routine. It's just kind of just out there. I love that. No, I do want to say the thing about routines and habits. Why do I like routines and habits? Well, a little bit of scientific knowledge here is once something's like a routine and a habit, the amount of mental capacity you need to do it is pretty much non-existent because you just kind of go into it. I think there were some studies on rats where they talk about willpower and it takes so much energy for you to like learn a new skill, but once it's inundated, it's just kind of like this thing that's like at the same level energy wise. So I think when you get your routines down and you get your habits down, they're this shorthand, right? They're this shorthand where you can just rely on them to get you going instead of having to force yourself. I think the first 2 weeks of the new year for the listeners, like they're having to force themselves, they're having to will it and they're really conscious about it. But we want to get them to that category where it becomes routine and habit, that it's just an unconscious thing to do the thing and then obviously show up and make it happen. But yeah, man, I think there's so much there, from tracking your progress, how to overcome your pitfalls. There's so much. And I
Yeah.
think one last thing, maybe though, and we can kind of end it here, is have some mother trucking fun. Enjoy the process. Kind of going back to that relevancy in the SMART goals. I think if you have a goal and you are hating every single moment of it, I don't think you're gonna stick to it too long, Marcos.
Yeah. I mean, again, don't fall in love with the results, fall in love with the process. Make the process so enjoyable that you want to continue to do it. Right. For a New Year's resolution, I would tell people focus on making things more enjoyable in health and fitness and find a way to be passionate about it in a way that you're viewing this as something that helps you for 10 years down the road, right? This idea to kind of recalibrate and restart things at the beginning of the year is, again, that happens once a year, right? How do you make it so that you're not worrying about starting over again, but rather just starting something a little bit new, right? Um, so make it enjoyable. Next year, try to plan ahead with it and try to like start little things in December where a lot of people are taking time off, right? And again, like I think that's where you can kind of lean into your community and or a coach at that time, which is like this isn't the right time to start. And it's like, yeah, maybe it is because this is where you can actually start kind of like planning and getting a little bit better. You may not have hit every day 7 out of 7, right, for the week, but 3 or 4 days, right? Whereas normally it was like 1 or 2, maybe, right? So again, like almost learning to like understand that setbacks are likely going to happen, And so if you're kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah,
kind of used to that happening in a period, you're like, man, like I mean, I have a lot of people right now where they're like, I feel like I failed you or I'm making excuses. Like you're not making excuses. You're
yeah,
we're just setting the tone. I was like, think about this. Like you're you didn't you didn't go the other direction, right?
yeah.
You've made progress in a different way. You had balance. Maybe for the first time ever, you talked about it. So with that being said, again, like plan ahead, make things more enjoyable, like Seamus was saying, right? Like understand that like, hey, like, I don't know, maybe it's Valentine's Day. It's like I think that's probably the next day after like 2 weeks where people are like, oh, I gotta take my significant other out. It's like, while everything I mean, everybody argues that their culture is like so food centered. It's like that's every culture. Sorry.
Dude,
It's
it's sorry, it's everything now. Honestly, like at this point, I'm gonna use like a Dave Ramsey kind of quote. He's like, "Oh shit, here comes Christmas again." The thing that that's been going on every year. I think that's just, I think our culture, uh, Western society, if you're probably listening to this podcast, like there's a lot of things are probably around food, and you just kind of have to just, okay, accept that, but then kind of
Mhm.
go, okay, how do I live that? How do I live with that on my own terms? You know?
That's a great question, man. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just try to have a stick to it attitude. Look at things as more of like a sum of the average, like some of the averages, right?
Yeah,
Like
100%, man.
it's not a day to day thing, and having a one off day doesn't define how the week will be. But at the same time, that's where using a lot of these different strategies we've talked about over the last 2 years in podcast land as is like hopefully people can apply it a little bit, especially, and again, like if you're really looking at this long term like weight loss goal outcome, but you immediately kind of like get derailed because the first 2 weeks are like recomposition. Like
Yeah.
again, you have to create and use tools that are going to allow you to operate in your headspace. You know yourself better than anyone. You can articulate where your normal pitfalls are, right? And the coach or your community of people, like they're gonna find ways to talk about things positively to you. People aren't gonna bullshit you when it comes to like if they notice a change in your body. Trust me. If that's something that you work on, just you don't need to announce it to the world. You can work in silence. At the end of the day, next thing you know, people are gonna be like, "Wow, you look great. I haven't seen you in yeah, yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. What have you done?" And you're like, I've been enjoying myself, but being consistent. I've found that enjoyable process. So hopefully,
Perfect.
we can all do that. And again, just like me, I've started to enjoy running. I look forward to the days that I actually have to do it because I feel like
Wait,
it's
wait, wait. Are you a runner now,
no, I'm not a
Marcos?
runner. I'm saying granted today was a little bit of a grind. It was a little bit of suffering, like slightly because the pace was a little harder, but just knowing I can wake up on those days that like this was normally a day that was like my walk time and it's like kind of centering my thoughts. Now it's like, oh, okay, it's like the intensity is just up a little higher. So
Yeah.
mentally, I like that sort of thing, right? I find it enjoyable because I'm like, man, I get this done. I have the rest of the day to not have to worry about anything personally, right? Get a little bit of walking here. I can just do 10 minutes versus trying to accumulate my steps normally for the day. So again, there's different ways of kind of stacking these different things together, looking at
Yeah,
yourself
100%.
and analyzing like if you need to move forward in certain things. So yeah,
Yeah.
man. I mean,
A
anything
lot
else
there.
to close us out?
No, no, no. Let's close it out, man. I think a lot there. I think, if you found yourself at this video, there's a reason for it. And I think that big reason was, hey, how do I keep the momentum going from the last 2 weeks, theoretically, to the next few weeks? And these principles are forever, and you should not just use them for the new year but across the time. And I think, Marcus and I wish you guys like a happy new year, but also at the same time like continued success and progress. And if don't don't hesitate to reach out, comment below, whatever it is you guys need. But yeah, other than that, guys, macro perspective peeps, Marcus and I are out.